Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Grey Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 12th of July, 2022. All right, everyone, let's get into it. So this morning, I woke up and had a little mini heart attack because I woke up and I read this tweet from CZ at Binance, which reads, "Our threat intel detected a potential exploit on Uniswap v3 on the Ethereum blockchain. The hacker has stolen 4,295 ETH so far, and they are being laundered through Tornado Cash. Can someone notify Uniswap? We can help. Thanks." So I think the reasons are obvious why I had a little mini heart attack here. It's simply because if there actually was an exploit with Uniswap v3, it would be very, very bad for very obvious reasons, right? Now, the TLDR here is that there was no exploit with Uniswap v3. It was basically a phishing attack, and you can actually check out this thread from Harry here, who works for security at MetaMask, into like how this attack actually happened. So it has nothing to do with the Uniswap protocol itself. It was basically a phishing attack here. Now, CZ was being grossly irresponsible by tweeting this out, and their threat intel team seems to be kind of like incompetent if that they were so quick to blame Uniswap rather than to blame Uniswap the protocol rather than realizing that this was actually a phishing kind of like attempt here. And then CZ saying stuff like "we can help" is also silly because if Uniswap protocol itself was actually exploited, then no one can help because they're fully decentralized, immutable smart contracts on Ethereum. And that's why, as I said earlier, why this would be so bad is because if there was an actual exploit, the only recourse would be people having to kind of like take out or withdraw their funds from Uniswap. Otherwise, the attacker, if there was an exploit for them to drain funds from the protocol itself, they could potentially drain most, if not all of the funds, depending on what the kind of like exploit was. But there was no exploit with the protocol. It was a phishing attack, which we've seen, time and time again within crypto and even outside of crypto. Man, you guys know I used to work in cybersecurity. Phishing was like the thing because like that is the easiest way to get access to something you want to get access to, whether it's targeted phishing at individuals, whether it's kind of like casting a wide net and just sending all these spam emails to people and hoping that they click something and download something for you to get control of their device. This is nothing new in the kind of like world of cybersecurity. So the fact that Binance's threat intel team didn't pick up on this and straight away went to, Uniswap v3 must be exploited. Yeah, it's a really bad look in my eyes, right? And obviously CZ tweeting this out was grossly irresponsible. I don't know if I'd blame it for the sell-off. I did make a joke about it saying, thanks CZ for for making the market go into poverty again. But I don't know if I'd blame that for that. The markets are weak right now in general. So, and it's kind of like, I mean, maybe the timing lined up a bit. Maybe it affected the Uni token. I think it did. But like the wider market, I don't know. I don't think so. I think the wider market just is weak right now anyway. But regardless of that, as I said, you can check out this thread from Harry here for a full breakdown of kind of like how this attack actually works, and it's quite sophisticated and quite I guess like quite scary as well because it was able to spoof a few things that on Etherscan. So for example, he says here, well Harry says here, the malicious contract pollutes the event data so that block explorers index the from as the legitimate Uniswap v3 positions NFT contract. So that's probably what the threat intel team looked at, and they're like, oh my god, like this is actually coming from the official Uniswap contracts. This looks really, really bad. When in reality, as I said, it pollutes, as Harry said here, it pollutes the event data and basically spoofs that it's coming from the original, from the legitimate Uniswap v3 kind of like data here. So again, that's why you can't, as I said before, trust block explorers 100%. They're good, but they can also be tricked into various things. The only thing you can really trust to verify things for you is your own Ethereum node, and Binance's threat intel team should have their own Ethereum nodes, both full and archive nodes, and should have quick access to query them. If they're a proper intel team, I don't want to bash them too much here, but I just think what CZ tweeted out was just stupidly irresponsible. Like this is the kind of stuff that can be considered FUD, right? Like people always go on about FUD this, FUD that. In reality, a lot of the time it's not actual FUD. It's just them, reading or hearing something that they don't personally agree with or like. But this is actual FUD. Like this is really bad information, completely wrong information being put out there by someone who people kind of like look up to and respect and expect not to put out this kind of information. So CZ doing this without checking is just really bad. And this is not the first time he's done this. He's done this in the past as well. And it's not just him, right? There's a lot of people out there who do this. But, I think that people, media would have run with this, and people would have run with this, and maybe people didn't see Harry's kind of like tweet here, and then or other people kind of like calling this out, and only saw CZ's tweet and thought that Uniswap on Ethereum, was exploited and maybe sold their uni tokens or sold their ETH because of it, whatever, right? Like this is material kind of like information, and putting out really bad information like this is not great, right? So I just kind of like wanted to highlight that there. Maybe you disagree with me on this, but yeah, I just think it was grossly irresponsible for CZ to do this. But anyway, that's the kind of like recap of what happened there. As I said, not an exploit with Uniswap at all, with Uniswap smart contracts at all. It wasn't an exploit really at all. It was just a phishing attack. I mean, I say just a phishing attack like it's nothing major. Obviously, it was, because a lot of ETH was kind of like fished here, but definitely kind of like not as bad as Uniswap's contracts themselves being exploited, right? Anyway, I'm going to move on from that. Got a bunch of other things to get through. So LensTube was released today, or revealed today. So Stani kind of like quote tweeted LensTube's tweet by saying, "LensTube is here. All content is stored on Arweave, and exciting features by Lens protocol such as pay to subscribe, collect videos, and mirror your favorite content to your audience, powered also by LivePeer." This is really cool. This is bringing together a bunch of different protocols on top of Lens, right? And you guys know that I've talked about Lens protocol a bunch before, and the reason why I'm so excited about it is because Lens is just a set of primitives. It's not this big monolithic thing that is trying to be this big decentralized network and kind of like do it all themselves. They've just got like a set of primitives that anyone can kind of tap into and build on, and then you can bring things together. So what's happened with LensTube is that they're building on Lens protocol, but they're also leveraging Arweave for kind of like data storage, content storage, and LivePeer for video transcoding, which I think is really, really cool. Now, this isn't to say anything about the sustainability of a solution like this. I have gone on kind of like a record on the refill before, and we discussed this in the Discord channel the other day, that I believe platforms like Arweave are going to long-term suffer with sustainability because of the fact that it is not cheap to store content, store data. And we were discussing in the Discord channel about this with regards to something like call data. Call data and data availability on a blockchain is very, very different to storing data such as videos and images on a blockchain. They're totally separate things. Call data is not, I mean, it's still kind of like, it's still heavier data than a normal kind of like transaction, and that's why L2s are so expensive right now, because it costs a lot to store that data. But the thing is that actual data like videos and images are much, much bigger than that. So you have to store them somewhere, right? And storing them on Arweave or Filecoin or some other solution is not cheap. And the way that the payment is done for people to kind of like validate on the network and to provide storage on the network is through the native token. That's why these tokens, they've been kind of like, especially with something like Filecoin, they're basically taking on the cost themselves. So they're being inflated away, and the way it's being paid for is via those tokens, right? Not just for the security, but also for the fact that they've got to keep the data available, they've got to keep the data online, they've got to store it, and storage. Storage is relatively cheap, but not when you're trying to store like terabytes, hundreds of terabytes, petabytes worth of data, which is exactly what would be needed to do a proper decentralized file storage solution. Now, obviously, the long-term goal is to make it so that people that are storing data will pay fees to do it, right? And the fees would make up for the kind of like, I guess, inflation, and then inflation would subside and fees would take over. But that requires offering a better solution than what already exists with something like Amazon AWS, for example, right? Now, I know, obviously there's other things like Arweave and Filecoin are trying to be decentralized, but the demand is just not there yet. Hope maybe in the future it will be there. Obviously, peer-to-peer file sharing is big as well, but I think with peer-to-peer file sharing, you don't have to necessarily pay for anything, right? You can pay to be part of like private kind of like groups where you get access to better seeding and things like that. But better peers and things like that. But generally, most people that are kind of like using peer-to-peer is to kind of like pirate things, and it's pretty much free for most people. So that's a different kind of like set of I guess things compared to something like an Amazon AWS or a Dropbox or anything like that. Any of these kind of like file storage solutions. So until something like Arweave and Filecoin competes with that, it's probably going to be just like a niche thing here, and they're probably going to have to keep paying out these validators out of kind of like token inflation. So that's why the tokens pretty much are down only here. But I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. LensTube itself looks very interesting, I think. Obviously, as a YouTube content creator, I do worry about my content being removed or my account being banned for whatever reason. Obviously, I don't monetize any of the Daily Gwei stuff, but even if I don't monetize anything, there's still a risk of me being removed or censored or anything like that. Whereas LensTube is obviously trying to be an alternative here where you can kind of upload your videos here, and it's all plugged into kind of like Lens protocol. And you can see here there's already a bunch of videos on here, and you can publish and post basically whatever you want, and plug in, be interoperable with all the other Lens protocol kind of like apps out there. So I think it's very cool. Obviously very, very early days. This reminds me of like the early YouTube days, really. At the end of the day, the interfaces may be better, but in terms of kind of like overall UX and UI, still a ways to go. But it's great to see something like this that exists, and I believe it's built on the Polygon POS chain because of the fact that Lens protocol is built on there. So very cool to see more use happening there of Polygon. All right, so Arbitrum introduced Arbitrum Nova today, which is a new chain built on Arbitrum's AnyTrust technology that optimizes for ultra-low-cost transactions with strong security guarantees. Mainnet is now open for developers to start building ahead of opening up to end users. So Arbitrum Nova, I guess, is the second mainnet product from Off-Chain Labs team, which develops the Arbitrum technology. Obviously, the first one is Arbitrum 1, which is the Layer 2 network, the optimistic rollup that we all know and love. But Arbitrum Nova is trying to be something more like a Validium, or something more like a post your data off-chain, post your proof to Ethereum, but trying to do it in the optimistic rollup sense. Now, there is a few architecture changes here, and there are kind of like things that differ in terms of security guarantees and trade-offs and stuff like that. And you can definitely read the thread and the blog post for a deep dive on that. But it seems that you could kind of like summarize Arbitrum Nova, if I'm getting this right, as an optimistic Validium, where you basically optimistically kind of like assume that the data will be available, and then kind of like there's fraud checking and things like that. But I mean, I haven't really had a chance to dive deep into this just yet, so I don't want to go much further than there in terms of kind of like the technical differences and how it all works under the hood, but it's cool to see this. I think that people kind of like, it's kind of like hard right now, right? Like, so this is a bigger kind of like discussion that I maybe want to dive into a little bit here around scaling generally. I think that there was obviously from, I guess, the start of DeFi summer to maybe the end of 2021 or early 2022, there was this massive push for scale, right? Because of the fact that Ethereum's fees were persistently very, very high. It basically priced out all the new users because a lot of new users didn't make money on kind of like ETH, and they didn't want to pay the fees and stuff like that, and they felt it was like a highway robbery or whatever. Layer 2 solutions weren't live until really the end of 2021. Or kind of like, late Q3 into Q4, and still coming online, obviously, this year as well. And then, there was this massive kind of like push to scale. And all these different solutions came online. There were rollups, ZK rollups, optimistic rollups. There were Validiums. There were things like Volitions. There were different kind of like flavors of ZK rollups, different flavors of optimistic rollups, different kind of like things like the Polygon POS chain, obviously alternative layer ones, and then now, things like Arbitrum Nova. So there's this kind of like wide spectrum of scalability solutions that are trying to do things as cheaply as possible and as securely as possible. Now, if you want maximum security, you're always going to have to go for a rollup on Ethereum. That's going to give you maximum security because both the data and the kind of proof is posted to Ethereum layer 1, so you inherit Ethereum layer 1 security. But there are also kind of things around that, like if there's training wheels on the protocol, such as admin keys and centralization at various aspects, which there are for pretty much all of them. I'm talking about in their end state, like a roll-up is your maximum security. Then you have the Validiums of the world, where the data is stored off-chain, but the proof is still stored on-chain, so that if the data is lost, you can't access your funds. No one can access their kind of like funds, but the funds can't be stolen. So it's kind of like a trade-off there as well. But that trade-off means that the cost is much, much lower than a rollup because the data is the expensive part of a rollup. And obviously, we won't be getting something like proto-dank sharding until hoping Q2 next year, and that's what collapses the cost for rollup. So in the meantime, we've needed all of these kind of like spectrum of solutions. And obviously the alternative layer ones got their time in the sun as well because there were massive incentive programs, and the layer 1 trade was a big thing, especially in the second half of last year. So because of that, I think people are kind of still really confused and still kind of like in the dark about what's going to win. I wouldn't say I have all the answers. My bet is obviously that roll-ups are going to win long-term because of the fact that they're going to get so cheap that nothing else can compete in terms of like security and kind of like, I guess like, what's the word I'm looking for? Diversity of kind of like options for builders and developers at the end of the day. But in the meantime, And probably for the foreseeable future, and probably for the next couple of years, probably at least, even if we do get Proto Dankshard in Q2, Q3 next year, at least for the next couple of years, these solutions are going to be very popular for those use cases that require like lots and lots, I'm talking tens of thousands of transactions per second from maybe big companies that want to deploy their own chain or deploy something, especially in the gaming world, that these solutions are going to exist. And they will build network effects. I mean, the Polygon POS chain is not technically a layer 2. It is not a roll-up. It has its own validators. It is basically referred to as a commit chain, but it's definitely not a roll-up. It's definitely not something that is as secure as a roll-up, but it's very popular because it was there. It was ready. They did a lot of good business development around it. They did a lot of good marketing. They got a lot of apps on there. Now, they do have plans to, I guess, change that to a roll-up eventually, but we don't know when that's going to happen. And I guess, right now, I mean, there's no point doing it unless the roll-up is in a state where it makes sense to do that as well. So there are all these kind of like wide breadth of solutions that are going to exist with scalability. There are going to be different trade-offs, and I don't think that rollups will be kind of like the grand winner for a while, but they will be the winner long term. I do think that most activity in crypto will be on rollups in terms of like execution. Settlement, I believe, will be on Ethereum, obviously, but in terms of activity on the execution layer side of things, I definitely think rollups are going to be long term the big winner. Now, short to medium term, it's hard to kind of like know, but I would put my money on these other kind of solutions being big winners because of the fact that they're just simply cheaper until we get cheaper call data on Ethereum Layer 1, which comes with the Danksharding effort and all the parts that fall into that as well. But cool to see this from Arbitrum. Definitely go check it out if you haven't already. All right, so speaking of Polygon, they have a major announcement happening today around their kind of like ZK tech here. So this is pulling in all of their ZK teams, I believe, which is really, really cool to see. And this is going to be happening at 9 p.m. Indian Standard Time, which I think is India Standard Time, which I think is 3 hours from when I'm recording this. So you may have already seen the announcement, but if you haven't yet, or if you're watching this, I think this will go live before this kind of like announcement happens here. Then yeah, definitely tune into this. But if you have already seen the announcement, I'm sure it's something very cool. I'll discuss it on tomorrow's refuel, of course, but just wanted to give a heads up to everyone that there will be an announcement today from Polygon about their ZK tech, which they've been teasing this ZK AVM thing for a little while now. I'm very curious to see what they have here. You guys know I'm an advisor to Polygon, but I don't have any insider knowledge on this or any kind of like knowledge ahead of time on this. I don't know what they've cooked up here. I'm as excited as I'm sure a lot of you guys are to see what this is. All right, so Chris here from the L2 Beat team has put together a nice thread where he starts off by saying, I synchronized Arbitrum and Optimism rollups full nodes. Optimism was done after only 2.5 days, but Arbitrum took a whole 3 weeks to synchronize. What's going on here? And he kind of explains exactly why this is the case in his little mini thread here. But the TLDR is that Arbitrum the Arbitrum Nitro upgrade is going to bring that sync time down dramatically because it's going to get Arbitrum closer, or Arbitrum is going to be leveraging the battle-tested Geth code base the same way Optimism is, or in a similar way that Optimism is today. But I thought this was cool because this is not something that many people talk about. Like, there are full nodes that exist for Optimism and Arbitrum because they are essentially blockchains. They're just blockchains that outsource their security to Ethereum. So all the same things apply here in terms of being able to sync the chain, being able to sync the chain in a timely manner, storage requirements, all that sorts of stuff. Now, Geth has obviously been optimized over many, many years to be very easy to sync. Same with a few of the other kind of like execution layer nodes out there. So leveraging that technology for things like rollups is definitely something that needs to be done, because 3 weeks to synchronize an Arbitrum node at this point in time, even though Arbitrum is I think Arbitrum is about 35% more transactions than Optimism, obviously is way too long. But as I said, once Nitro comes out, which hopefully will be soon, then that kind of like time to synchronize will hopefully get more in line with what Optimism has here. And over time, that will either stay the same, get a bit longer, come down. It's kind of like this cat and mouse game. If it gets long, then we implement some kind of like things to get it down again. And then there's also different ways to prune the chain, or kind of like different sync modes. And that's all going to come. But I thought this was just like a really interesting little thread. I just wanted to highlight it for you guys. You can check it out. It'll be linked in the YouTube description. All right, so it's kind of funny that this was the way the Starknet token was confirmed, but Suzu tweeted out a couple of emails here got to do with 3Arrows Capital's Starknet token warrants. Now, For those of you who don't know, 3 Arrows Capital was an investor in Starkware, I think in 2 separate rounds, and obviously that gives them the right to exercise for tokens. Now, Starknet token wasn't confirmed yet, so that's why I said that this was a funny way to confirm the Starknet token because of the fact that Su Zhu is basically showing these emails. Now, what are these emails? Well, basically, what happened is that 3 Arrows Capital or 3 Arrows the people that 3 Arrows Capital delegated the responsibility to failed to actually exercise these token warrants in time, which was by July 5th, and now they're not going to be able to get their Starknet token. So these emails basically show them. I guess, like their lawyers, I think, trying to kind of like figure out what went wrong here or kind of like what's going on here with this exercise option. But basically, it's funny because like if it needed to be exercised by July 5th, it probably means a Starknet token is coming relatively soon. And obviously, it also confirms that a Starknet token is coming, but we also already knew that. Like I've said to you guys before, everything's going to have a token. This is just another one that is confirmed here. But I just wanted to highlight that because I thought it was a very funny way to kind of like announce a token, or it's kind of like reveal that there's going to be a kind of like token here that we all knew was coming anyway. But just wanted to give a quick brief update there on that one. I'm not sure if there'll be more news here. I think this is the first tweet that Su Zhu has put out since his last one on June 15th. So almost a month after he put out a tweet where he said that 3 Arrows Capital were communicating with parties to pay them back. He tweeted this out. And obviously, you know, you've probably read about the fact that they've been quote unquote on the run. No one can kind of like locate them. No one knows where Su Zhu and Carl Davies are right now. So it's a bit of a bizarre turn of events that he would tweet out just a couple of images of emails about the Starkware token warrants or the Starknet token warrants here. But anyway, it's there. It's, I guess, like some juicy information, some alpha leak from Su Zhu. Su Zhu alpha leaking from the grave, so to speak, right? Obviously, 3 Arrows Capital is done, but it's kind of funny that he's just still leaking alpha here. But yeah, cool to see that it's actually been confirmed. Maybe Starkware will be doing a press release in the coming weeks. We'll have to see what happens there. All right, so speaking of tokens, Connext announced that they were going to do a token a few weeks ago called Next, or I think a few months ago at this stage. And they put out an update yet today where they said, given recent market conditions and volatility, we have decided to delay our token distribution temporarily. Below, you'll find the reasons behind the decision and the next steps we are putting in place to transition Connext into a DAO. Disclosure, I'm an investor in Connext. Just want to get that out there. But yeah, I mean, I always find it funny when token launches get delayed due to unfavorable market conditions because it makes sense, right? You want to launch your token in a strong market. You don't necessarily want to launch it into a weak market. But I've discussed this before in detail, so I'm not going to rehash it here. But I've talked about how token launches are really hard to do normally, but I actually think launching in a bear market is better than launching in a bull market. And I mean, the TLDR of that thinking is that there's less speculators in a bear market. You get the tokens into, I guess, more of the long-term contributors' hands, and there's less speculation when the token actually goes live. But I kind of get the reasoning here, and there is a thread that explains more in depth about the reasoning. It's not just because of unfavorable market conditions, but it's also about kind of like how it plays into the protocol and the DAO itself. So you can give this a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you. All right, so Bert Miller from the Flashbots team is calling all validators to test MEV boost. So MEV will be an important part of validator rewards after the merge. Our early exploration showed it could increase rewards by 70%. So basically, this is for the solo stakers out there, those of you who run your own nodes. If you don't run your own nodes and you're delegating to some other kind of like node out there, whether that's through decentralized or centralized staking pool providers or liquid staking providers, then you will be reliant on them running MEV boost. Now, MEV boost is basically the proof of stake version of MEV, kind of like boost that's run on the execution layer today, where MEV is collected. It's basically the same thing. It's just for the consensus layer instead, because of the fact that post merge the rewards will be going to validators instead of miners. So if you want to test this, you can. But as I said, I mean, the thing is, you can test this as part of kind of like your, I think, mainnet validators, but also on the testnet as well. So if you are solo staking, you probably get involved here. And just like for any of you solo stakers out there in general, you should be running this anyway, like on your validator. Like I'm planning to get this set up on mine before the merge happens because, I mean, this is going to substantially increase your amounts of reward. You're literally leaving money on the table if you don't do this. So to give it a read, find out what it's all about in more detail, and hopefully you'll be able to give it a test as well. All right, so LiFi Protocol here announced that they have raised a $5.5 million strategic round led by 1KX. Now, disclosure, I participated in this round because, as I said to you guys before, I think bridges are going to be a huge thing in kind of like in crypto generally. I think that they're going to exist both for cross-chain and multi-chain. So cross-chain being cross like L1, multi-chain being cross L2s, right? So I participated in this round because what LiFi does is it basically aggregates these bridge solutions together and kind of like allows people to get the best liquidity across different kind of like chains and different bridges. So cool to see that this is finally public. This raise actually happened a little while ago, but I guess it's cool to see that it's finally public here, and I'm very happy to be backing them. They've done a lot of great work, and they continue to do a lot of great work. So congrats to them on this raise here. It also had participation from other well-known investors in the space, such as Dragonfly Capital, Scalar Capital, and Coinbase Ventures, which are a bunch of others there, and a lot of angels. I think 90 angels participated in this round as well. So you can go check out this thread for more details. I'll link it in the YouTube description. Oh, God, this is going to be funny. This is another thing that was revealed today that I am an investor in as well, just getting that out there. But anyway, Alpha Day is now, the landing page is now live. So what Alpha Day is trying to be is like a one-stop tool to basically stay up to date with everything happening in crypto. So basically an interface for you to keep track of what's happening in crypto, not just on-chain, but off-chain as well. Obviously, we have things like Zappa and Zerion, which I'm of course big fans of, but Alpha Day is going kind of like in a different direction, where it's not really too much about tracking your portfolio and tracking your positions and things like that, which it does have that. I mean, you can see that on the screenshot here, but it's also about aggregating things like news, events, DAOs, like voting within kind of like different DAOs and voting on different proposals, also market information, crypto Twitter, and a whole bunch of different things. And the way it works is that there's going to be a bunch of modules that you can kind of like plug and play and things like that. It's kind of like the Bloomberg terminal for crypto, which I thought was really, really cool. And that's obviously why I participated as an investor in the kind of like round here. It's not live yet. This is just their landing page and their kind of like official reveal here. So you can definitely follow them on Twitter to get updates when they put them out there. But yeah, I just thought it was really, really cool when it was first showed to me. Actually, a little while ago it was first showed to me, and it seems to have evolved a lot. It looks a lot better than the kind of like first iterations that I saw, obviously. But yeah, I think this is just really cool. Like, as I said, guys, like I use Zappa like every day, pretty much. Because of the fact that it just gives me so much really good information. And I do find it hard sometimes as a person who covers the news to aggregate a lot of things together, especially things from like my emails, news more generally, crypto Twitter, and keep track of all the events happening and having like a calendar there and having it all on one dashboard. I think this would be really cool because I have actually two monitors that sit in front of me. I have my big monitor in front of me. I have a 49-inch, the Samsung Ultra Wide. It's the best monitor I've ever owned, by the way. Quick plug there. Samsung's not sponsoring me, but like literally best monitor I've ever owned. But then I got another top one, a 34-inch Ultra Wide on top of it that I usually have like charts on and things like that. That would be the perfect place to put something like this, right? Like you put a dashboard up there, be able to track everything. I can have market stuff there if I want to, but I can also have events and news, and I can kind of like keep track of it in real time without having to kind of like do the ad hoc stuff that I do today. So that's kind of like one of the reasons I'm definitely super interested in it. And you can also create your own widgets, as it says here as well, right? Like that's what I like about this. These modules, these widgets are not going to be something that's just provided by the kind of like company building Alpha Day, but it's also going to be something that people can kind of like tap into as well and build their own. So really, really cool to see. More information hopefully will be out about this soon, but you can go follow Alpha Day HQ on Twitter to follow all their updates. All right. Guys, a couple of things to get through. So Superfizz shared some great, I guess, Ethereum staking resources today on Twitter. You should definitely check out. I'm just going to link this in the YouTube description for you. Obviously, aspiring solo stakers out there, this will be of interest to you. But even if you're not aiming to be a solo staker, and even if you don't want to be a solo staker, this is still of interest to you because it will show you other ways to stake, whether that's through Rocket Pool or Lido or other kind of like solutions out there, whether they be centralized exchanges. There are many, many different ways to stake, and these guides help you to choose what you should stake with or what is best for you. Obviously, if you want, you can go the full 9 yards and become a full sovereign solo staker at home. I mean, obviously, I highly recommend it. All of my staking is done through solo staking right now. I actually do plan to set up a Rocket Pool mini node eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later. I've been meaning to do it, but this week's been kind of busy. It's my 30th birthday on Saturday, so this week I'm just kind of like trying to get all this stuff done because I'm having people over. But anyway, that's a bit too much life story there. But I am planning to kind of like spin up that kind of like Rocket Pool node like very soon, hopefully Rocket Pool mini node. But generally, I am like a full self-sovereign solo staker. All my validators are run on my own staking PC that used to sit behind me. You probably saw it in my older videos. But you don't have to do that, guys. Like just because like I'm doing it or other people are doing it doesn't mean you have to do it. There are solutions out there, and especially decentralized solutions like Rocket Pool out there that will allow you to still do at-home staking without having to have that 32 ETH requirement. And also that could be dropped more. Like the mini pool allows you to kind of like do it with kind of like less ETH. I think it's like 16 ETH, but then you can kind of like, and Rocket Pool wants to drop that even further. And then obviously if you've only got like 1 or 2 ETH or something like that, you can put that into to Rocket Pool as well. You can just go buy RETH tokens, for example, or you and then you can kind of like still be staking technically, right? So there are many solutions out there, but definitely check out these resources from SuperFizz. I'll link them in the YouTube description. All right, finally here, just a shout out that I'm the merge series that I'm doing with SSV Network. We're having another kind of like interview here on another Twitter Spaces here on July 15th at 11 a.m. UTC, which is I think 8 p.m. my time, Australian Eastern Standard Time, which would be around lunchtime in Europe and early morning in the US. This one will be with Vito, I think hopefully I'm saying his name right, from Alchemy here, talking about I guess probably more on the infrastructure side of things because Vito works as a dev reel on Alchemy, and Alchemy is a centralized infrastructure provider for Ethereum and other blockchains. So we're going to be discussing all that sorts of stuff and how it relates to the merge. So definitely check that one out. You can set a reminder on the Twitter Spaces if you just click through here. You can see set reminder. I hadn't set it yet. I mean, I don't really need to, but there it is. Okay, it's at 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, not 8 p.m. But anyway, you can check out this. I'll link it in the YouTube description. But that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.